Good afternoon, guys. My name's Glenn Samuel from Sniper Photography. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. Look, recently I did a bit of research on a subject which I like to call coming from good to great. In other words, how do people become good at what they're doing to becoming great at what they're doing? And yes, this pertains to photography as well as other forms of life, whether that's personally or professionally. Now, when I'm not in front of a camera like this one, or behind a camera taking photos, I'm an avid reader. I read about 35 books a year. But recently, I've been reading books on famous people, people that have succeeded to a high level in life. That encompasses people like Roger Federer, one of the greatest tennis players the world's ever seen, Dr. Charlie Teo, the world-renowned neurosurgeon here in Australia, and even Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America. Regardless of what you think of him, he went from good to being great. But how did they do it? And it's the same with us photographers. How do you become from a good photographer? How do you get from a good photographer to a great photographer? Well, all these people have the same thing in common, and that is that they think outside the square and they do things that other people just weren't doing or aren't prepared to do. Let's take Roger Federer, for instance. Roger Federer started off being a good tennis player, but he became great. He became one of the greatest tennis players. But how did he do it? Well, Roger Federer would go out and play a 4 or 5 set match, and then he'd go and train for 5 hours straight after it. He would train in the snow, the rain, the cold, the wind, the heat. He would train when other tennis players were asleep. In other words, the old saying, you've got to do the hard yards to gain that greatness. And he has achieved that. Charlie Teo, Dr. Charlie Teo, one of the best neurosurgeons on the planet. He performed operations where he was told he couldn't do, or they were impossible. But he made the impossible possible by thinking outside the square and, yes, taking a chance. That leads us to the President of the United States, Mr. Donald Trump. Donald Trump, regardless of what you think of him, he started out as a property owner, or property developer. While he was working as a school kid, while his mates were out there buying flash cars and going to beaches and parties, this man was working. But he was very smart with his money. He put it into real estate and, well, the rest is history. He went from being good to great, regardless of what you think of him. But he did get there. But it's what these people do that elevate themselves from being just good at what they do up until becoming great at what they do. And it's the same with us photographers. Many a time I've driven 3 and 4 hours to get to a location, then middle of the night bash me way through the bush to get to a hidden waterfall, just so I could catch the first rays of light or shoot in the blue hour. And after being there for 2 or 3 hours taking a few shots and working the landscape or working the scene, I start to leave that location. I'm passing people, other photographers, going to that location. If they had gone the extra yard and thought about, well, I'll do something that another photographer won't do, I'll get to that location first, like I did, to capture great images. So it's just a matter of doing little things and doing them very, very well. The gap between good and great in any facet of our life, both personally and professionally, it's not a big gap, but there's a lot of work needed in that gap to lift yourself from being good to great. Now, everyone can do this. We're all born the same. It's up here. It's between the ears as to what you want to do and what you want to achieve, not only with your interests, or hobbies or profession, but in your life in general. You know, we've all got an ability, but finding that ability sometimes is quite hard for people, and I understand that. But pertaining to photography, if you want to be a great photographer from where you are now, and I know lots of good photographers, but they just stay at that level. I like to teach people to get them to go from that level being good to great. But how do you do it? How do you get there? Well, basically, as I said, you've got to do things that other photographers aren't prepared to do. Shoot in the rain, boiling heat. Don't worry about if it's midday. You can overcome that with your camera settings and a bit of up here knowledge with photography. Do things that other photographers won't do or haven't even thought about doing. When I was a wedding photographer, I had the bride and groom hanging out of trees, for goodness sakes. But I got the shot and people were impressed by it because I thought outside the square. I went that extra yard, done the hard work to go from good to great at what I think I do. And you can do that too. You can do it. You're no different to me. You're no different to any other person out there. So think about that. Think about what you're currently doing and think about what you'd like to do and where you'd like to be. What do you have to do to lift yourself from being just good at something to being great? There's a bit of work there, but as I said, that gap's not very large, but there's a lot of work got to go into that gap to go from good to great. So have a think about that. Think about next time you take your camera out and think about different shots. Think about shots that other photographers aren't going to get. And I can guarantee you there's a good chance you could go from being good to great. So that's it here for another episode of Sniper Photography. It's getting dark now, it's been hot here. But as I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep shooting and have fun, and bye for now.